that whole idea of Judaism, traditional Jewish values are incompatible with Western values. Like, where the hell do you think Western values came from? Jerusalem and Athens. And it's the perfect merger between those two.
Jake, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Aaron.
Absolutely. My first and most important question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, for real, how are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. Honestly, I'm somebody who spends a decent amount of time on X, so all of the bad things that I'm experiencing, I can just throw it at other people, kind of do the little wind up toys with the Groper Smurf army on there. And then by the end of the day, I feel terrific. And personal life's going well. The dog had a sprained hind leg for about a week, and now she's no longer limping. I mean, everything's doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Dude, yeah, I never had it so good, to be honest. We're both in a similar situation. Both of our wives are pregnant with our first child. I think that's the first time I've actually said that on a podcast episode.
Mazel tov,
So
congratulations.
that's good. When this episode drops, I guess the news will be out, which is great. So far my wife is healthy. Things are good. What about your wife? How has she been feeling?
She's terrific. The problem with her is that she's a preschool teacher and she has 11 2.5 year olds. Nine of them are boys. So she's exhausted when she gets home every single day. And for better or for worse, I'm both the cook and the cleaner in our household. So at least I get to take that onus off of her shoulders. But she's doing really, really well. And I've got her favorite dinner online for tonight. So, I'm going to surprise her. I'm trying to be a good husband. It's not easy, but I'm trying.
Dude, yeah. What's on the docket? What are we having?
As she likes to call them chokes, so artichokes. Very simple, just steam them depending on the size for like 45 to 15 minutes. Melt some butter, put some garlic in there. And then we also had some friends from Israel drop by yesterday who brought some Israeli olive oil. So I've got some really good bread, olive oil, some za'atar, and some salt. And, I'm just going to give her whatever the hell she wants.
Amazing, amazing. Well, for a little context, I guess for some listeners, we connected via X. I'm not sure on what post or whatever, but I started following you, and then you sent me a DM, and then now we started chatting, and we've interacted on a few posts, and it seems like we have some similar interests that coincide. Judaism, Israel, wrestling, sports, things like that. A little more. I mean, I guess they're all super niche topics outside of sports. That's not really niche, but wrestling is. Judaism definitely is. And so, yeah. I mean, I'm pumped to talk to you, and really, I'm using this as sort of a self-indulgent episode to create a new friendship and also get to know you, and while we put it on a public platform. So, thanks for doing that with me. So, I think I want to jump off with both of us becoming dads, like I mentioned. Do you have any trepidations? Are you nervous? How are you feeling about bringing a human being into this world?
So, given the climate of Jew hatred right now, very trepidatious. You can also see, if you look through my impressions or if I shared it with anybody, you can actually see when our ultrasounds are. Because leading up to the ultrasound, impressions, replies, posts, it's like a little bit here and there, just the stuff that I want to get off my chest. And then after the ultrasound, when I realize, oh my God, I'm bringing a baby into this world, all of a sudden the posts and replies and me just verbally baby powdering everybody online, that really tends to have an uptick. But honestly, in terms of am I worried about being a dad? Yes. But this is one of those situations where all of my buddies, they already have children. My little brother, he's got a boy and a girl. So every time I ask him, is there anything I can do to prepare for better and for worse? The answer is there's not a single thing that you can do to prepare for this. And so it's like, you know what? Go with God, vaya con Dios. Just like, let's see what happens. You're never going to be prepared for this, and it's going to be the best ride ever. So, all right, yalla, let's go. How about you? What's your feelings on the subject right now?
I mean, right now it's all excitement, just because it's still a bit far away. Um, but since we're having a boy, I think about just men and masculinity in general, and certain role models and things that I want uh, my young boy to try and represent. So as I think about that, I'm trying to now really represent those characteristics in my own life to know that I'm like actually leading with the things I think are going to be important for him to develop. So, so I'm thinking about that a lot. Nerves for me are good. I mean, the nerves borderline on excitement. My wife is really excited because I haven't always wanted to be a dad.
Really?
And so it's been an interesting journey for me getting to this point. My wife has a lot to do with it. Meeting her has a lot to do with, wanting to start a family. And we can get into that if that's, if we can, if we want. But have you always wanted to be a dad, Jake?
Always. So I have six siblings, three older brothers, older sister, then it's me, little brother, little sister. We grew up on a farm in Connecticut, 42 acres, the most atypical Jewish family you will ever hear in your entire life. Like, if you go on my X, Red, White, Blue Jew, I call myself, I believe, a redneck Irish Israeli American. And it's true. Like, my earliest memories are of milking cows and collecting chicken eggs. Like, that's how I grew up. And every single person in my family is an athlete. And so I always wanted a family because we were outside nonstop. We barely watched television, but when we did, it was New England sports. Like, we'd all come together after playing outside for hours on end. And then we'd go and we'd watch the Red Sox or the Bruins or the Celtics. Apparently, my parents took me to like the Celtics when they used to have to play in the Hartford Civic Center. I don't remember that because I was barely 1 year old, I guess, at the time. But I always wanted this big family. And then here I was already in my mid 30s being like, where is my family? I've yet to meet somebody that can deal with me. And I don't say that it was the women's fault in my life. I was saying that was my fault. And then I met this like 5'1", badass, completely yadded Jewish woman who is more stubborn than I am. Her emotional intelligence is off of the charts. And we literally, on the very first date, because our first date, we were both 34 years old, we were talking about children. And by the end of the date, I'm like, oh my God, I literally pray to Hashem that you are going to be the mother of my children. And now that it's happening, I'm like, this is awesome, quite literally providential. But how old are you? Like, how did your wife get you to change that mindset for you?
Well, I'm 32 right now. I turned 33 in June.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a story. I mean, I guess the whole point of this is to get to know each other. So I'll give you some backstory. Um, it all really stems from my sister, who's a very pivotal and important piece in my life. But in 2018, she died. Um, she died by suicide, and that her mental illnesses are maybe a story for another day, as we continue to get to know each other, Jake. But my thought process with her was she was always the relationship person. She's an older person than me. She wasn't older. She's 2 years older than me. She always wanted to have a big family. So I felt like the burden of having kids, and I felt as a burden back then because I was like a young guy who wanted to sleep with a bunch of chicks and do all the sorts of things, right? And so it felt like a burden on my freedom to have kids. And so she was going to have them. I was good. My parents, who were amazing and the most supportive people on the planet, were going to have grandkids. She was going to have a girl and a boy. Everything was going to be cool. It was all good. I was like, great. Then obviously she passes away, and it took me a few years to sort of figure out what I wanted to do. And then I met my wife 3 years ago, and I started thinking about, because she asked me, right? That's an important question when you get into your 30s about, do you want to have kids, right? You start to really drill down on the values and things that are important to you when you get to that stage. And my honest answer with her was, I don't know. Because if I were to have kids right now, that was 3 years ago, I would be doing it solely because I need my parents to have something to look forward to.
Hmm.
Because when you bury a child, there's just like there's a dark cloud that sort of looms over you sort of for the rest of your life. And our relationship is very close, but I felt like I had to do stuff to make sure they had something to look forward to: dinners, planning events. And a grandchild, there's nothing more you can keep your hands around for love and joy and some light in your life than a grandchild. So I told my wife, like, I would do it because for them. But they're not raising the kid. They're not up in the middle of the night. They're going to take the kid every once in a while and be amazing grandparents, but they're not actually raising it. And so I had to figure out my feelings that I wanted to do this for us and our family. And my parents' happiness was a byproduct of that. And so it took me a while to get there, but because I have an amazing wife who gave me the sort of the grace and the time to think about it, to process it, to try to understand it, she always knew that I was going to be wanted to be a dad. She like had it figured out, I guess, because she knew me better than I knew myself.
They
And so
have to
over
do
those
it for
years, by the time, we got married, which was just September of last year, um, that was a commitment that I wanted to make, and now I'm having a kid because I want to be a dad, and it sounds fucking awesome. And it's definitely 100% doesn't seem like a burden on my freedom. That's an immature, childish way to look at it, like we all do as young men.
Yeah.
But if you listen to Dr. Jordan Peterson a lot, which I do, the best way to have responsibility and to actually grow as a human being and think about things more than yourself is to have a kid. And so that's my journey in a nutshell there, Jake.
I love that. And if I may, one, absolutely beautiful. But from my perspective, you're also carrying on your sister's legacy,
Mhm.
and how she approached life. And you're taking this really, honestly, and I'm so sorry to hear that, but horrible thing that has occurred and actually turning it into something positive. And then you met somebody like most Jewish men, right? You meet these Jewish women who somehow were like big, strong, especially you and I, like you can even tell from the shoulders we got going right now in our video. Like we're strong, right? But we are nothing compared to these women, and they can just cut us down. And I mean this in the best way, and turn us from boys into men. And I've read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I can't remember the last time my bed wasn't made. And it's
Mhm.
that little stuff where you just more responsibility that you accept, the better you become, the less you are a child and the more you become a man. And that's really, you were talking about role models earlier. That to me, that's what I feel. The more my wife's belly continues to grow, I'm like, oh, this is me becoming a man as she's taking on this gigantic responsibility. But at least I'm here helping her out. And it's so beautiful, honestly, to hear you going through a similar experience. And congratulations to you. You got there about 3 to 4 years before I did. So you're already ahead of the game compared to me.
Yeah. Well, we just got to keep ourselves in good condition so we can, So I was telling this to one of my parents' friends that I'm really close with about how by the time my boy is still 18, I still want to be able to take him down.
That, that, that. I have said that so often. My dad was born in 1941. I was born in 1987. So when I was 13 years old, he was 58, 59 years old, depending on the month, right? He could still beat me in a foot race. I want to be 60 and be able to beat hopefully I've got a son coming. I have a daughter, Baruch Hashem, that will be happening in July. But we're really hoping we have more than one, and really hoping that we get another Jew with the last name Donnelly down the line who's got a Y chromosome. But that's my goal. I want to be able to take down my 18-year-old son, because by that point, if I'm compounding that, old man strength, I hope I can just take him down. Maybe I'm not as strong, but I'll definitely be more wily than he is. That's my hope, at least.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and I train jujitsu now, so I just got my blue belt, and I'm putting my son in there by the age of, I think, 4 is what my professor said the youngest you can get in there. And
Mhm.
so if he actually sticks with it, which up to him if he likes it, but I want to teach him how to use his body, and that his body is a powerful and strong, and he's capable. And so maybe by the time he's 15, which is like 9 or so years of jujitsu, he'll probably be able to do some pretty good damage, especially to me. And so those will be fun sort of, things to talk about. Because I think the way you earn respect is through that sort of action, through getting in the trenches and actually doing the work. And I think that's a lot about what masculinity is. It's just about, falling down and getting back up, and falling down and getting back up. And sports, as you know, or jujitsu, whatever it is a great vehicle to learn those types of things. At least that's where I learned, most of my lessons on how to be someone who is capable of doing that.
Yeah, it's the entire idea of iron strengthens iron. How do you get yourself stronger if you don't put yourself through these challenges? And that's why I personally love sports. Granted, I've literally fallen off of horses before, but we have draft horses, which are the wide workhorses, and that's not fun to fall off of. But that's the only way you can figure out how to do these things. And for me, as somebody that is off and on working in the nonprofit Jewish community, where I see a lot of, just to take this slightly in a different direction, but where I see a lot of where the older generation, the one that came before us and then the one that came before that, has failed American Jewry is they didn't teach confidence. And you don't see a lot of Jewish American athletes. And for me, that has really come to roost now in this climate that we have on the campuses and on the universities because they're afraid to speak out. But if you don't have that confidence that you've developed through jujitsu or through sports, how do you have the confidence to then speak out and to do something about it? And that's where I really see. I have this article on my X page, on my Twitter page, the Jewish American birthright. And that's one of the big pillars that I have is we have a crisis of confidence. And it's not the younger generation that has failed. It's our generation and the generations that came before us that has failed. And sorry for taking a different direction, but I just see you working in jujitsu and developing that strength, both physically as well as mentally, as an area where we can really improve as a people.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I would like to know how you think about, trying to make those changes. What are the actions? What are the solutions that maybe you've come up with to do that?
So for me, it's pretty easy. I talked about my background. Grew up on a farm in a little podunk, rednecky farm town where there's nothing but cows, corn, and tobacco, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. We were really the only practicing Jewish family in our town of 8,500 people, and I actually went to a private school, Solomon Schechter, about 45 minutes away. And so we were always not in between two different worlds of this wonderful redneck world from my hometown and this Jewish day school world, but we're in both of them. And my dad was a Vietnam Marine tanker. This was a guy who lived a really hard, tough life. His older brother was my uncle, was a chopper pilot in between Korea and Vietnam. One of my cousins was a Top Gun pilot in the Persian Gulf War. So I have this family that is military, that's athletic. And so I never had any issue speaking out. Probably got into a little bit too many fights because I had no issue speaking out. And my little brother's built like a refrigerator, and he's currently a cop in our hometown, but he was a cop in Hartford. One of my older brothers was a cop in Hartford as well. And we always had this desire as a family to give back to the community because we love the United States of America. We love freedom of religion. We love freedom of the press, the ability to say and do whatever it is the hell that we want, so long as we don't actually come into contact with anybody. And when it comes to how do I see American Jewry getting better, it's by embracing what it is that makes this country great. You're in Texas. Texas is the home of patriots. It is one of the greatest places to live in the United States of America. And it's because the people in Texas love what this country stands for: property rights, strong borders, right? The emphasis on the nuclear family that we've already talked about. And when people talk about the greatness of the United States of America, I wish I actually had it with me, the Tanakh, the Torah, and the writings and the prophets, right? I can point to a bunch of different spots where all of the things that make America great, to borrow a phrase, all of those things, you can find it in this thing called the Bible, and specifically our version of it. And so to me, if you want to talk about what makes America great, I'm going to talk about traditional Jewish values, and there's not going to be any discrepancy whatsoever between America and Israel. And it's why I hate how people say, like, oh, America first, and then you can't be a Zionist or something like that. Because to me, my traditional American values just so happen to be extremely traditional Jewish values. And I think, unfortunately, too many people are too afraid to talk in that manner. And I know for a fact that it actually does play because while I've moved on from my previous job 6 months ago, I still have a bunch of the students that I used to mentor reach out to me every single week, just saying, like, hey, what's going on here? How can I do this better? And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help mentor and to develop a more confident psyche in the American Jewry.
Yeah, I think I heard Josh Hammer talk about this exact thing in an episode he did, I think, with Liz Wheeler very recently. But he was talking about that. That's what it is to have Western values is based in the Old Testament or the Torah, whatever you want to call it. And it was very funny when you get on X, like, and you see that, and then right underneath that, in another tweet was like, Judaism is not compatible with Western values. It's like, okay, okay, that's just so funny how it shows up. But again, you have freedom of speech. You can say what you want, I guess, but you're also allowed to have consequences for saying stupid shit that doesn't make sense. So
Somewhere along the line, those two things diverge. It's not that you have freedom of speech and therefore you have freedom of consequences. It's no, you need to actually figure out how to better use your speech and to deliver messages that people can actually really be receptive towards. But that whole idea of Judaism, traditional Jewish values are incompatible with Western values, like, where the hell do you think Western values came from? Jerusalem and Athens. And it's the perfect merger between those two. That's why I love the Daily Wire. You have a Jew talking to a devout Catholic, talking to, I forget what Jeremy is, even though he stepped down as CEO, guys that wear the wooden crosses around their neck. Like, this is fantastic. That's exactly what America is. Not exclusionary religion, but inclusionary religion where everybody can talk to one another. And you know what? We're not always going to agree, but at least we can have an area where we can all have the conversation.
yeah, yeah. Going back a little bit, basically what we were saying about values. That's yes, it's a collective responsibility, but it's also an individual responsibility. Like, you have to understand, you as a person, what your first principles are and where they mesh with, because then you know what foundation you stand on if you have a set of values that are important to you. And yeah, you can get them outside of a religious context. That is, like, you can do that, but what are those values? Are they, kindness, compassion, hard work, resiliency, consistency, family, whatever it is? You have to have some set of values, and then they do have to mesh with how to live in an ethical and moral way, because we all have certain intuitions that what about living in an ethical, moral way is. Yeah, sometimes we veer off the path, of course, because we're imperfect human beings, obviously, but we know basically what those means. And if we can have a set of values, religious or not, that allow us to move down that path a bit better, then I think that's sort of the most important thing. But that's not really expressed sometimes in our culture, whether it's Judaism or not. And so I think you're 100% right. It's like, if we can get down to sort of the nucleus of, like, these are our values, here's how you try and be the best version of yourself in greatest service to the world, and it might work out. There's no guarantees in life, but it'll probably be better than not having a set of first principles, things that can drive your life or filter your actions or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and you have guys like Konstantin Kiss. I'm not sure if you watch or listen to the Trigonometry podcast, but that's what they talk about. He always likes to argue from first principles, and that's exactly how I like to do things. And it keeps most of the conversation at least on a trajectory that makes sense. What I think that we being the West, have been going through for the last 5 years, maybe 10 years. It started to sneak in when I was in college and the way long ago, graduating in 2009. But what I think we're seeing right now is, whereas we used to argue on the fringes on how to make the West better, now it seems like there's actually an attack on the foundational values of what it means to be somebody who lives in the West. And that's why I've really gone from, like, okay, maybe this isn't my fight, to, all right, I'm strapping on the tape and I'm like, let's put some rocks on this thing and let's go. Because if you lose the West, then we've seen what happens. Everybody likes to complain about what the world looks like under religion. We had the 20th century, and we've seen what the world looks like when you take religion out of it, and it's the Great Leap Forward, and it's the killing fields in Cambodia, and it's the Holodomor under Stalin in Ukraine and Soviet Russia. Like, we've seen what no religion is like, and that just destroys what religion looks like. There was more than 100 million killed, murdered in the 20th century. And so I'd rather go with religion, because at least with religion, and I don't honestly care if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Buddhist, at least if you have something that is a higher power that keeps your morality in line, at least then, if you go astray from your morality, I'm now going to be able to ask you, why do you think the way that you're acting and the way that you're talking is appropriate? Because either you've ditched your moral system, or your moral system is in of itself off and eventually evil. Like the phrase that I always like to use with the students is Hitler really thought what he was doing was the moral thing. And that's because he developed with Nietzsche his own moral system. And hey, so long as you abide by your moral system, you're acting morally. But I, a descendant of Western thought, can say that's not moral. And here's the reasons why.
Yeah, there's a set of standards that are easy to follow. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you see this in like almost every superhero villain that's ever existed, right? Like they all believe they're doing the right thing. I have to kill half the world because everyone sucks basically, right? And I'm doing the right thing by helping us regrow and start again by murdering everyone.
That was Thanos. Thanos's morality in his moral system was acting morally. That's where you make a really great villain, honestly. It's not that the villain is, I'm going to be evil. That's not an interesting villain. And it's why Stan Lee and Kirby did such a good job with the original comics, because their villains were actually these people who had developed their own moral system and were acting morally within their own system. That's how you get such great protagonists versus antagonists. It's when both of them believe that they're acting morally.
Right. I mean, I didn't know this was going to lead me in this direction, but it's like
I'm a nerd. This is all my wife stuff, but I'm a huge nerd. So
no, I love it. It's like a really good WWE heel. You know what I mean? Because the reason why you hate this person on television is because you see the little glimpse of yourself in it. Ooh, would I turn on my best friend? I would for some money, potentially. I would for a championship. I would for that hot chick. And so you see little, because we all have the capacity for good and evil. That's just what human nature is. Of course, we want to sort of outrun or overcome our nature and put out the goodness more than the evil. But we have to come to terms with that evil. And so watching a character like that on WWE, a really good heel who like has hints of truth, and so you buy into it, but you're like confused, like, oh, I actually don't really like that guy, but sometimes he tells the fucking truth, and that's yeah, because people aren't living right. And I don't think they should be murdered, of course, right? But like we need some sort of quote unquote attitude adjustment, you know? But and so I don't know. I always found, like, because I was growing up, I love superheroes. I love WWE, still do to this day, hasn't changed one bit. But it's so interesting how when you get older, there's so many parallels to the narratives of real life and how they just tell the same story over and over and over again of basically the hero myth. And there's always that bad guy that shows you like, oh, he's sort of okay. I get it, but he's too dastardly. He does these evil things. So now I got to shy away from, being or running in that moral direction.
The thing that everybody always overlooked about the Vince McMahon character was the fact that everybody deep down, everybody always wonders what it would be like to be the big boss, to be the person who has all of the power. Now, caveat, Vince McMahon's personal life, ew, no, awful, right? We get that out of the way. Not talking about anything. We're talking in the world of kayfabe right now. But the chairman, everybody always wonders, what would I do if I had that much power? That's why he was such an intriguing character, and why Stone Cold, the anti-hero, a guy who didn't always do the perfect thing. But how often do you want to take a beer truck and a hose and wash your boss down with it? Like, that's what you want. And then here comes Kurt Angle, right? Doing the same thing with his milk truck, right? This is why there's only like 4 or 5 stories that you can ever tell. But it's how do you package these stories differently? And everybody always thinks that they're going to be Marty Jannetty, but most of the time, if you gave somebody the option, they'd be Shawn Michaels throwing Marty Jannetty through the glass. And that's the stuff that, especially with the WWF, with the WWE, wrestling, AWA, when you really boil it down, that's the stuff that is so interesting. Who is the person that you actually relate towards the most? Like, that is the really fun stuff. I mean, my older brothers were at 1990 Survivor Series when The Undertaker debuted.
Oh, fuck.
And from that moment on, my older brothers are much, much older. From that moment on, The Undertaker was always their favorite wrestler. For me, I'm the little brother. So who do you think was my favorite wrestler?
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, Kane. So Kane
Kane.
is always mine, but it was the demon Kane, and then they dropped that part. But it was just Kane, the big red machine. And for me, that was always the stuff that I gravitated towards because you want to root for the underdog, and yet who is the underdog and who is the person that has the power in this battle between the Undertaker, the Prince of Darkness, and the big red machine Kane? Like that was the stuff. Oh, I'm getting way too excited about this, that I just loved growing up because it just speaks to these conflicting emotions that every single person has deep down inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same could be said about the hero, right? The hero who is like perfect all the time, never messes up. Like some of the sort of like the original Superman stuff where it was just like he can't do anything wrong, nothing can defeat him. He's perfect, he's good looking, he has a hot girlfriend or wife or whatever. He's tall, he's like I can't. I don't
What's
relate.
the
I'm
word
just,
for that?
you know?
What's the word for it? Boring.
Yeah.
They're boring.
Yeah.
That was the issue.
And then they started to do some tweaks to him where he could get beat up and things happen and he became a more popular character. But the reason why people resonate with Batman so much is because he's so flawed, and he does some horrible shit. But you're like, intrinsically, he wants to do good and he's trying to do good and he's trying to, outrun his trauma and his nature and he's trying to do the best that he can, which makes him more of a hero. And those are also the best ones that you see, in WWE. That's why John Cena for a long time was really not liked as a babyface because he was too perfect. He won every match. He came out there as perfect. And then he started to develop some of these edges about him. Now he's heel in current day and people really dislike him because they thought the whole thing was fake the whole time. And he is telling them it was fake the whole time. And it was awesome the way it's been portrayed. But he was, let's go Cena sucks because it was too clean cut. It was too perfect. People are rough around the edges. We all have flaws and mistakes, and we have to be able to accentuate those and then be able to understand what those are and then still try to do the best we can with those flaws as human beings.
And Cena's that perfect example because the Let's Go Cena, that was all 13 and under. Cena sucks, that was sometimes 13 to 18, there's a little bit muddy. But once you hit like 18 years old, those were the people that were chanting Cena sucks because it's too clean cut. It's too perfect. Okay, maybe initially you want to root for him, but even how Cena debuted was with ruthless aggression, with actually being a human being who just took the governor off of his car and let it go. Again, against Kurt Angle. And I love Kurt Angle as a wrestler, one of the best workers of all time and a legit shooter, right? A guy that literally won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck, right? But why he was such a great character is because he was presented as American wrestling Superman, but everybody knew that you were actually supposed to hate him. And that was also some of Chris Jericho's best work, in my opinion, was going up against Kurt Angle, was pointing out the flaws of just how boring and trite a character like that is. And no one's here for that. You want the conflict because that's what life is. Life is conflict. Life, being a man, as we talked about earlier, is all about overcoming your demons. And WWE, wrestling, WWF, that's the place where you can watch other people go at it in a way that's actually approved. Not some of the other stuff, there was some puppies and things like that in the Attitude Era that looking back on it's like, oh man, I can't believe I was watching that at that point in time. But that was the stuff that was so fun and it was why it was so intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah. When WWE is done right, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of storytelling you can possibly do. And there's just no way, if you're interested in that sort of narrative, which all life is driven by narrative, that you can't get totally invested in the thing. That's why I fell in love with it and still in love with it to this very day. So.
Yeah, and even going back, and this is me, I'm a sports broadcaster by trade. That's my graduate degree, Master's of Science, and I did play-by-play broadcasting throughout my entire 20s. But the stories that everybody grows up learning, it's the Greek tragedies, right? Your Greek heroes have these flaws. Usually it's hubris, that you have too much pride. And even that's how the wrestling world works, right? Even your baby face, when the baby face gets in trouble, it's when he is exhibiting too much pride, when he's playing to the crowd. Now, granted, that's actually usually what the heel ends up doing, and you're just waiting for the heel to get his comeuppance. But that's where life is. Life is in those like dirty little edges in between good and evil. And I just love how wrestling does it because it's also a show, it's drama. South Park made fun of it, but I have no problem saying that wrestling is soap operas for men. Like, I have no problem with that. Give me, I want my drama, I want my soap operas, but if it involves a guy beating up another guy, hey, now I'm really invested in this.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you currently watching any professional wrestling?
I came back within the last year. So
Let's
I
go.
didn't pay any attention. I had seen some of the stuff during the PG era. I didn't like it when NXT went from their original way to like the colors. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Checked it out, didn't enjoy it. I would still watch some of the big moments. So I have seen like Kofi Kingston defeating Daniel Bryan winning his first belt. I like that, which is great. And I'll still get sucked in for the Royal Rumble and these huge matches. But I was away for a long time. Now, with the bloodline and how the bloodline has turned against itself, and Paul Heyman, just listening to Paul Heyman talk is one of my favorite experiences of all time. His ability, as somebody who still believes that his purpose in life is to talk to crowds and things like that, specifically with the American Jewry youth, watching him and understanding how he controls crowds, I have a notepad and paper out. I'm like, okay, how does he do this? How does he bring them through this roller coaster? I love that. And then with John Cena and the heel turn, I am fully back in now. It's on Netflix. My wife falls asleep and I'm like, Netflix. Like, okay, now I get to watch it. I'll listen to Jim Cornette and Brian Last as they do the Cornette Experience and the drive-through, and listen to them break it down. And for me, there's that, I get to go back in time. So there's that nostalgia aspect to it all. But at the same time, now as an adult who likes to tell stories, now I'm listening and watching this stuff as storytelling, like par excellence. So very, very long-winded way of saying, yes, I'm back into watching wrestling.
Beautiful. Yeah. I was a professional wrestler as my job for a while. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, right when I was done playing baseball, I became a professional wrestler named Jackson Stone. And that was my career. And then, I mentioned my sister, and then once she passed, that sort of changed the way I looked at life. And then a couple years later, I stepped away. I'm doing some matches now as sort of like a little bit of a comeback, just to have a good time before my kid gets here. But
That's
I,
amazing to just be able to look at that. So
yeah,
I think that's so cool.
yeah, it's amazing. And so when it's interesting when you're actually doing the thing on a consistent basis, you start to look at it in sort of a skewed, potentially resentful way, like why am I not there, yada 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 yada. And you see that a lot with guys who are in the business. They sort of lose the love of the thing that they love to do because we're so involved and entrenched in it. And so I took a few years off, but I've got a buddy that I've been watching wrestling with, Tanner, since we were like, 14, 15. And he always wants to go to a bunch of shows. And luckily, some of my friends work for some of the bigger companies. And so we're able to go. And that got me involved. And then I started a YouTube channel for wrestling and yada. And now I'm back wrestling. And so the whole thing is great.
So they're still doing okay?
Huh?
The flat back bumps, you're still good with that? Everything's fine?
Yeah, I mean,
Sound,
it's good while it happens. The body, it
adrenaline's
takes
a
a toll on the
great thing.
body a couple days later when the adrenaline's worn off. But having done jujitsu basically the whole time that I hadn't been wrestling was quite helpful, just for my body and the sake of my joints and all of that stuff. But I'm not going as hard as I used to, at least before COVID hit, which sort of changed everything for me as a wrestler and my life and all that stuff. But yeah, man, I always try to convince people to watch it just as a pure entertainment art form. And once you see it that way, sort of like an Avengers Marvel movie, because the same sort of story arc happens throughout a potentially 15-minute match, they see it less like, oh, this is supposed to be a UFC fight. No, it's not. It's
It's a
supposed to be,
story.
it's a story, it's entertainment, it's narrative, it's Greek mythology, like you were saying. Then it's like much easier to get invested into the thing because you're just suspending your belief for however long you watch it, just like when you go watch, Batman on the large screen. And I think that's cool. And it's really hot right now, especially with Netflix and it going mainstream. And so it's cool to be a part of it and see some of my friends doing really well.
I think one of the things that people do incorrectly nowadays, I'm 37 and I talk like I'm born in the 1950s, but sorry, Dave. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is that idea of they expect the thing that they're watching or experiencing to be something other than what it's meant to be.
Mm,
Wrestling isn't a UFC match.
right.
It's a story. It is good versus evil, which is why it's so important that there is a baby face and there is a heel, because now the person watching it can ingest it as a story itself. But if you're trying to experience something, this happens in movies and shows where people try to imbue politics where it just really shouldn't belong. There are times and places for that, and it's a beautiful medium in order to do that. But you first have to start with, am I telling a good story? Am I doing something that is going to entertain the audience for the audience's sake? And then when people watch it expecting something else, now all of a sudden you've got Snow White. Like, that's why Snow White sucks. Let's take the politics out of it. But you can't do it because they imbued it entirely with politics, as opposed to, was this a great piece of intellectual property, and is there a beautiful story told within the realm of, in this case that I just brought up, Snow White? Like, that's, people want that. People want that almost simplicity, and we've kind of messed with it so much, and now when you watch something you're kind of confused, like, what is it that I'm doing here? And then you get Snow White, where the evil fairy godmother, who is, I'm sorry, Gal Gadot, is much better looking than Rachel Zegler. Rachel Zegler, wonderful, easy on the eyes. Not saying she's not, but like, Gal Gadot's an actual Miss Universe, right? It's an easy thing, and she's asking, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? The mirror should just smack her in the face, go, it's you. You're the fairest of them all. But because of politics, we can't do that, and that's where everything just twists sideways.
Yeah.
Tangent, sorry.
No, it's like why Top Gun, the most recent one, was so successful, and why Tom Cruise keeps making the same style of movie, and he's doing like his 12th Mission Impossible, which I'm fired up for. It's gonna be awesome, and it does well because it's an easy to follow story. I'm not saying that people are stupid and they can't follow complex stuff. They definitely can, but things have to be established at the beginning so they understand the moving parts, and then they can put all the complexity together. But the basis and the foundation of the story is real, it's true, and it makes logical sense.
Yeah, there's beauty in simplicity. It's that simple. It really is. And I was watching an interview, actually, ironically, or not ironically, coincidentally, earlier today, about Tom Cruise looking at some of the stunts that he's doing and has done in his previous films. And it's all about, is this entertaining? He's not even looking at it as, wow, isn't this so amazing that I've done this myself? He's thinking literally the entire time about the person on the other side of the screen watching it and asking himself, does this make sense? Is this something that is going to entertain the viewer? And if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't entertain the viewer, he doesn't do it, which is why somehow Tom Cruise, with the exception of, I would say, Keanu Reeves, is the last great action star, because that's his lodestone. That's what he's thinking about. Is this entertaining? Is this something I would watch if I had nothing to do with it?
Mm. Yeah, I think about that question specifically with this podcast. After I do like an episode, I'm like, if I was me and if I was a young man or person looking for a podcast, would I listen to my own show?
Yeah.
And that's a good marker, because if you wouldn't listen or watch your own product, why the fuck would anyone else?
No
You know?
chance.
And I'm
No
like,
chance.
yes, I would absolutely listen to this conversation, maybe exclude myself from it and just listen to Jake talk, right? But like majority of the time, the conversations, like I learned something as just a host, and so yeah, I needed this show when I was a young man growing up to be able to develop some of the values and the characteristics and the traits I wanted to. So I mean, my audience is mostly young men, and so great. If I would have used it when I was their age, then maybe it's a good tool for them to use now that they're trying to blossom into this healthy version of their masculinity.
Right. And there's so much unhealthy. There's so much toxic. I hated the term when it first came out, toxic masculinity, because it was said by a bunch of people that I considered to be extremely toxic people. But now there is a lot of toxic masculinity. Like you look at the Tate brothers, and nobody should be emulating their lives over the Tate brothers. How they act, what they think is a good thing is amoral. I'm somebody that has very black and white morality system, but those are not good guys. And I can say that because I am, as I said before, a descendant of Western thought. And you just know that, I'm sorry, talking about how you're pimping out women is not a good thing. That is not something that people should be emulating. And where a lot of people get things twisted now is somebody's able to see that there's an issue. Good. You've got a good observation. And I'll give the Tates this because, again, I like to consider myself moral and call balls and strikes. I was a catcher for 25 years, so I think I'm pretty solid at that. But you see something that is wrong and you point it out. Okay, you're halfway there. You're not all the way there. The other part is what to do about that. And where a lot of young men go wrong is, okay, the Tates have done a good job recognizing that something is wrong. Then what they prescribe as the antidote is just as toxic, if not more, which is why instead of, okay, here's Tate and Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and a lot of really good, smart influencers, right? But now you got to listen to the people that say, okay, now go get yourself a wife, grow up, be a man, take on more responsibility. And it's the same thing that it carries over into the world of sports, right? Are you going to cut a corner? Are you going to tell your head coach, if you're a baseball player, and we were both baseball players. I was the guy that was in charge of the 6 a.m. Workout crew, which was me and a mirror. No one else showed up for the 6 a.m. because it was college, right? But if you're in charge of the 6 a.m. workout crew and nobody's there, are you doing all of your squats? Are you doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing when nobody's watching? And that's what being a man is about. And if your audience is geared towards this younger generation of men, and what you're talking about is how to be an actual man and not the kind of man like a Dan Bilzerian, but the kind of man who is starting a family and knows how to be a good person. Now you're doing things right. You're not just doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for your community. And there's nothing better than that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I look at masculinity as the warrior poet.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to have both sides. Now, warrior can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean you're going out and slicing the heads off of bad guys, but there's a version of you being a dangerous man, you being very capable and dangerous and becoming an absolute fucking monster and having that under voluntary control. Thank you, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And having the most important part is then having it under voluntary control. But you have to have adventure in real life to understand what that means. You have to have rejection. You have to do hard shit. You have to go talk to that girl and get rejected over and over again, and go to that job you think you're not qualified for and get told off. Like, all of these things have to happen so you become more capable and more confident. That's the warrior. So then you can have the ability to provide for a family like we're trying to do, which gives you even more responsibility and a burden, and a good, healthy burden, something like you want to take on. I want to carry this weight. I love this. And while that's happening, you're building a community of people you can ask for help. That's also a power of religion, because now if it gets too heavy, I can ask for help. I can say I need some support here. Hey, can you babysit my kids, my wife, and I need a night off? Like, we want to continue dating and loving each other. And then that's the version of you that's a poet that can express love and beauty and amazing things about yourself, to write vows, to tell your wife that you love her, you appreciate her, and to be that poet for your kid too, to show them what love is really like. And so when men want to integrate themselves, that's what it's about. It's about the warrior poet, and each thing can be developed on its own, or it can be developed sort of in unison as you experience things in real life, as you go on that adventure of life.
Yeah, and I've never understood the people who are afraid to fail, love failure. Like, okay, we're all human, right? That's the number one thing that I always think about. I'm like, I'm human, I'm going to fuck up. And knowing me and knowing my past, I'm going to fuck up constantly, right? But it's how am I going to respond to my absolute fuck ups that will eventually happen? And then also, am I tough enough to ask for help? Am I somebody that understands I don't have to do everything all the time? Am I somebody that goes, okay, here is where I don't know what I'm doing? Am I man enough to say, I don't know, I can learn, but who is going to teach me? We've already talked about Jordan Peterson. One of my favorite guys out there is Jocko Willink. Willink's like, yeah, you're going to suck. You want to be a leader, right? You want to be a leader of men. You're going to make mistakes. But the thing that you have to really figure out is, where are the mistakes? How do you figure out where are the mistakes? By making the fucking mistakes in the first place. You need to be there, and you need to do it in a situation that, thankfully, I've never had to do this before. But unlike Jocko Willink, other people's lives aren't at stake, which is why you go and you try to take down those dragons, a la Jordan Peterson, in areas where it makes sense. And that's how you develop your character. And then by the time, hopefully, you're 40, you're a pretty fucking badass guy by that point, and you know how to be not just a man, but a father.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm glad this conversation that went in this direction.
We had no idea before we got on how it was going to go, too.
No, it's great. It's perfect. It worked out exactly like it was supposed to. But I do want to ask you about one more thing. And it's about October 7th. How did that change you, change your life, change you as a Jew, or did it not? You know, what has that led you to think or believe, and where are you at now?
Okay, so I was one of the people in the minority who was not surprised at all that October 7th happened. I was, because there was one of the parts of my job prior to October 7th was going into schools when there was incidences of anti-Semitism and trying to correct what was going on, teaching not just the students about how to combat anti-Semitism, but also the teachers and the administrators. I knew that the teachers and the administrators, they wanted nothing to do with it, mostly because they were kind of in favor. Let me take that word out. They were in favor of the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish cohort, that red-green alliance that you might hear about, red being Marxism, cultural Marxism, green being Palestinian jihadi terrorism, just to kind of boil down some big thoughts all down into one. So I wasn't surprised that October 7th happened. I was a little bit surprised as to the way that it happened and just the barbarity of the massacre itself. So that was step one. Step two was on October 9th. October 7th happened in the United States on a Saturday. Woke up to all of my friends in Israel, and I'm an Israeli citizen. Just guys going like, what the fuck's going on? Message, no idea which of my friends are alive. I was living in Tel Aviv, so a lot of my friends were kind of like hippie music festival people. So thankfully, none of my friends, there's a bunch of stories of how they were supposed to go down to the Nova Music Festival and they didn't make it, thank God. But I knew, like, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, he was friends with some of my mentees. So there was that aspect too. And in the aftermath of October 7th, I went to Harvard on October 9th, and that was before Israel had responded. So on October 9th, all of Harvard was out in support, glorifying the resistance. And it affirmed what I had always thought. I'm a pessimist. I like to think pessimistically because then I'm aware of all the bad things that can happen and I can prepare myself how to respond as quickly as possible. It's kind of how I live my life. But to see so many people saying glory to the resistance, what a great day, globalizing Antifada. I'm like, okay, this is the war I was always prepared for. Like, this is my moment in time because now I know that the shit's about to get really, really bad. And as somebody who is a student of military history, I'm like, okay, right now, Israel should respond like the United States did to Japan. Yes, most of the West likes to think about how the United States and the Allied forces took on the Nazis, and the Nazis sucked. But one of the things that I think America has done wrong is kind of glossed over what the Japanese Imperial Society was like leading up to World War II. We can't say it on this thing, so I will say the consensual love-making affair of Nanking. Let's call it that. If you know what I'm talking about, we'll just keep it right there, right? So that was a horrible thing. Comfort women, absolutely horrible things. The Bataan Death March with getting people off from the head, right? All of this stuff was what the corrupted Japanese society was doing, and was every single person had bought into the idea that the Japanese were going to take over the world, that their moral system, by the way, bringing it back to the first part of the discussion, was the right way. And for them, and this corrupted idea, Bushido is the essentially like samurai code for the Japanese. In this corrupted form of Bushido, if you surrender, you have given up your rights as a man. That's why all of these massacres and atrocities occurred. And while you have something like Dr. Mengele and his experiments in the Holocaust, you have to also have somebody like Dr. Ishii in Unit 731, which, again, Jew who literally has a degree in Jewish studies saying this. Dr. Ishii in Unit 731 is actually worse. Almost nobody knows about this stuff in the Western world. But why am I going on about this? I'm going on about this because how the United States and Israel should have responded after October 7th was how the United States responded to the Japanese, which was firebombing the ever-living shit out of the Japanese because they decided to put most of their military munitions in Tokyo. So you have something like Operation Meeting House, where 100,000 Japanese died in the span of 36 hours on March 9th and March 10th, 1945, militarily necessary. You have Hiroshima, Nagasaki, obviously the atomic bombs, militarily necessary. What Israel decided to do, and maybe it was because of who was president, we'll never know, but what Israel decided to do was go very slow. And it was a terrible decision because wars, the longer they drag on, are worse. And that's what we're getting right now. And to finally kind of answer your question, how has it changed me? I have hardened myself to the realities of war. And what you see right now is people conflating ideas of genocide. Now, there's also other parts to that where they're doing it intentionally to take the word that was literally created to describe the Holocaust, but they're conflating genocide intentionally with war. War is horrible. That's why you don't start war. If you're somebody that has taken a look at the death toll in Gaza and even in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria right now, and said, how could Israel do this? I would like you to look at what war is actually like. Because my solution to avoid war is to not start a war. And if you look at the definition of genocide, October 7th was a genocide. I have a video that I post everywhere, and I use Cenk Uyghur's definition of genocide because I just like to needle people. But how his definition of genocide is exactly what occurred on October 7th. What has happened since then is war. Now, that's not to say it's not tragic, and it's not to say that it is something that I am gleeful over. I am not. I understand people are dying in the most horrific ways possible. But what I know is that that is war. And that's why war should be avoided at all costs. Now, going back to the whole moral system that we're talking about, where Hitler thought that he was doing right, and the moral system that is currently the overriding system in both Judea, Samaria, West Bank, as well as in Gaza, that moral system says murdering Jews and murdering Israelis is in of itself moral. So that's not going to stop. And right now, today, as we're recording this, there's actually protests in Gaza against Hamas. And while that is fantastic, and we need to see more of that, and Western media actually needs to show that to people, the thing that I'm trying to get people to recognize is they're doing that while the war is now on. They weren't doing that during the ceasefire. If you want people to really get to peace, which is what I want. Nobody believes me, but I really do, because my buddies, and I'm not sure about yours, but my buddies are literally on the front lines. I don't want them in uniform. There's not a single IDF soldier that I know that wants to be in war right now. Israel's awesome. Israel's a place where you can walk and everybody's happy and you can have yourself a fantastic time. Nobody wants to be in this war. But Israelis know this is not a war they asked for, but it is a war that they will finish. And unfortunately, the world has forgotten what it takes to win a war. And what Israel's doing right now, as horrible as it is, as bad and terrible and honestly tragic as the images coming out of Gaza are, that's on Yahya Sinwar. That's on the Palestinian people for literally electing Hamas, which then took over the Gaza Strip by throwing Fatah members off of roofs, and no one had a problem with it. They still have majority support. So for somebody that wants to get to peace like I do, and I'm sure there is a contingent of Palestinians that do as well, maybe you shouldn't have genocided Israelis, and specifically the peaceniks, by the way. That's the thing that everybody overlooks. Kibbutz Nir Oz, Kibbutz Be'eri, the people at the Nova Music Festival, those were the people that believed in the two-state solution, and that's now dead. So to try to really sum it up in one sentence, and I'm so sorry for going off on this one, but if you're somebody that wants this war to end, tell the Palestinians that. The solution today on March 25th, 2025 is the solution that it was on October 8th, 2023. Release the hostages, dismantle Hamas. That's it. It's actually that simple. We talked about how there's baby faces and heels, how there's good and there's evil. That's this. Granted, yes, obviously, there is nuance to so much of this, and the history is so fucking muddled that it's almost comical. At the same time, if we're talking about this war, if we're talking about this situation, two things you have to do. Sorry, that's the catcher in me. One out, two out. There's two things that you have to do, right? Release the hostages, dismantle Hamas. Pashut. That's it. Simple. But nobody wants to actually do that. And that's why this war isn't just continuing, but must continue. Because this is the war that is trying to stop all future wars from happening. Sorry. Did I answer the question well enough? Sorry.
Yeah, never apologize for speaking, Jake. Not on this show, because when we have multiple conversations on here, you can talk for as much as you want. That's why I invite you on. Yeah, I mean, and then I think the third step after that, after what you just explained, is to have a universal moral compass against jihad.
Yes.
Because there is jihadism everywhere. We've seen, we've seen Christians die in the Congo. We've seen just horrible shit happen because jihad, and there's no set of universal moral code that says jihadism is bad, and we have to hold them accountable everywhere they are all the time. But right now it's incentivized to be a jihad. You get money from Qatar, you get propped up by Western fucking students in Lululemon pants, right? It's like fucking wild shit. And so if there's no accountability, then it's just going to keep coming. That's why in Gaza, yes, a lot of jihadists have been killed, but now they're using child soldiers. And so now it just seems like their numbers are more and more and more because they have these 12, 13, 14-year-old boys who've now been basically enslaved into thinking that killing Jews and Israelis is the right path, is the moral code, is the path to freedom or martyrdom or whatever, because there's no universal moral compass that says jihadism is bad and we have to hold them accountable no matter what, just like we did with Nazism after World War II. I guess nowadays like Jake Shields and Dan Bilzerian think it's cool to be a Nazi, but most people think it's still fucked up and horrible and Nazism is bad because of what all of that stuff we did.
Yeah, and that's why I actually bring up the Japanese culture, because we, as in the Western world, did a terrific job of denazification in Germany.
Yeah. Say that 5 times fast.
Right? In Japan, it was worse. It was every man. They were doing kamikaze attacks, like terrorist attacks, all the way back then, right? It wasn't just kamikaze planes and kamikaze submarines. It was kamikaze dogs. It was kamikaze walking sticks. There were a bunch of shit that the Japanese were prepared to do if the United States actually went on to mainland Japan. And so that just gets glossed over. We, as in the United States, had to make their fucking God submit. That's how we ended World War II. World War II didn't end when the Nazis surrendered. World War II ended when Japan surrendered because of Emperor Hirohito, their actual god that not a single Japanese civilian had ever heard in their entire life. We made him do a radio broadcast to say, okay, everyone, time to call it quits. And then what is one of the most peaceful and honestly revered societies in all of the world since 1945. It's fucking Japan. So for all of those people that say that you can't kill an ideology, fuck you, you're wrong. You know nothing about history, and you specifically know nothing about one of the worst ideologies to ever exist, which is the Japanese imperialist corrupted Bushido culture of World War II. And we turned that culture into something beautiful. Anime, awesome. Japan, fucking sushi, great. Everyone that goes to Japan loves Japan. Baseball, fucking thank you, Ichiro, Shohei Ohtani. I fucking love you, Japan. From 1945 to present. From Jesus, they were awful against the Russians too, the Russo-Chinese War. They were awful, like just awful. One of the worst societies to ever exist, and now they're amazing. So for everybody that says you can't destroy an ideology, yes, you can. It just takes really fucking brutal action. And unfortunately, or fortunately, Jewish values, Western values, tell you that if you need to go over and kill a bunch of fucking people, you sometimes have to, and that's the moral thing, because what you're going to do in the long run is not just save your own people like we did by saving upwards to 1 million people by not invading mainland China and instead dropping a couple of atomic bombs on Japan. Instead of that, you're also now saving the Japanese. And that's the thing that pisses me off more than anything else about this discussion. I want more Israelis and Jews to not die. Yeah, that's a weird way to say that. I want more saved, right? But what I really want is more Palestinians to live, and to live great, prosperous, happy lives. But the people that are actually promoting, and as you use this word, and it was perfect, Aaron, incentivizing the actions of these jihadis, they're the ones getting Palestinians killed, but because they're not the ones actually dying right now, they can say it on their fucking campuses and their universities, and they can write articles in the Atlantic showing their asses, but what they're doing is they are getting Palestinians killed. And for that, I will never apologize for speaking the way that I speak. I want to headbutt something now. Sorry.
All right, let's go hit the gym.
I already worked out this morning, so I'm like, oh man, my wife's going to be angry if I go for another one. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Anyways, Jake, thank you, man. This was a pleasure. Can't wait to do it again because we will. And any last minute thoughts, closing comments, things you want to touch on? Maybe we didn't get to touch on. I know there's a lot more we could talk about, but any last minute closing thoughts?
Yeah, I've got one. Rob Manfred's just attempt to try to destroy baseball is something that angers me, kind of like the way that you can see me getting angry right now. But beyond the stupid fucking softball international rule of putting somebody on second base in the extra innings, college with that fucking stupid now double bag at first base. I saw a clip where somebody got picked off even though he was on the base, but he was on the wrong base. Like, oh my God, it's like trying to turn NFL football into two-hand touch. The one thing, if I could have my druthers more than anything else, opening day in baseball should take place in the United States of America. It shouldn't take place overseas. It's America's game. I understand that he wants to do something for the international people. Figure out a different time to do it. But opening day, games that count, should take place in the United States of America and matinees. I want more matinee baseball. Okay. I know it's a weird one, but it's just, I love baseball and I love opening day, and it's so weird to me that games that have already occurred prior to opening day already count towards the 162 total, and that makes no sense. And I hate Rob Manfred for that. Yeah. You got a lasting thought?
Oh man. Listen, I baseball is the third thing that I love most in this world. Professional wrestling probably being fourth. And so I want, like, if his intention is to grow the game of baseball so more people watch it, I agree with that intention. But the way he approaches it is no good. It's no good. Like, speeding up the game, that's fine. Okay, we can speed up the game because your traditional baseball fans are always going to watch. Maybe you'll get some new people who can sit down and watch a 2 hour and 30-minute game. But there's some dynamics of the pitch clock that take away some of the cool nuances of the game. If you remember a couple years ago when Bryce Harper hit that opposite field home run in the playoffs, we're never going to see anything like that because everything is so sped up now. You're never going to see the anticipation, the pacing, the pitch by pitch, him stepping out of the batter's box, the feel of it, just the vibe, right? And so I get it. You want to speed up the game. You want more people to watch. I want more people to watch baseball also. But there's some things that are just crucial to the game of baseball. And so I think there just has to be a deep look at what actually is going to make baseball the best sport it can possibly be and make it America's pastime like it should be. And I love the international feel. I love they're getting more international players, but it is America's game. And, yeah. And so, I mean, I have a lot to say about it, but also the trickle down effect into sort of youth sports, which I see is very interesting, especially with college sports and NIL and all of that stuff trickling down to youth sports is very, very interesting. And so there's a lot, but I mean, yeah, I'm pumped for opening day. It should be a national holiday. We should have the whole day off. And also, yeah, there should be games at 1 o'clock and 12 o'clock every day because people want to watch those. People want to watch those while they're working. They want to watch at home, want to listen. I got T-Mobile, so I get MLB TV for free. It's awesome. Thank you, T-Mobile. Shout out to that. And so, yeah, I guess that's good to end on a lighter note.
That's what I was going for. I was just like, I went down, and I was just like, what could I do to bring this back up? I love baseball, and it's opening day. Let's go, baby.
Hell yeah. Well, Jake, thank you very much, man. I appreciate you. And would you want to steer any people in the direction to check out more of your stuff, or where would you want them to go?
So I've got my X page, Red, White, Blue. I also have been published a couple of places like JNS, Jewish News Syndicate. You can always find me. And that's really the best place. I'm always going to say anything. Agree with me, disagree. I hope you kind of disagree because it's a lot more fun. But I always want to hear what somebody says. So yeah, try to find me on those. And Aaron, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Absolutely, man. Cheers. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.